We're having a bit of a discussion earlier about some of the work you're doing in cancer research environment and how some of the things that you focused on related to gut bacteria might have some relevancy to youth soccer players, and some of the information you've been able to identify might translate. So I'd love it if you could kind of give us a little information about what you're finding.
I mean, I think what we're learning in cancer patients is that the gut bacteria can make a tremendous difference in how they fight off cancer, how they can delay cancer progression by decreasing simple carbohydrates, getting rid of the sugar in the diet and the processed foods. We know that dietary approaches like the Mediterranean diet or the MIND diet, MIND, are anti-inflammatory diets. And so we're intrigued by how that may relate to how patients respond to treatment as well. Digging down a little bit deeper, we're starting to understand that the microbiomes in the gut, in other words, the bacteria that lines a person's gut, the flora, can dramatically affect how they respond to anti-cancer drugs. And the newer drugs are called immunotherapy drugs that actually allow the immune system to fight the cancer rather than drugs that you give that just specifically attack a cancer cell. And that's a whole different change in environment that we've had, and kind of a breakthrough in the last 5 years that have progressed us farther than we have in the last 100 years. Mm-hmm. So that being said, we're starting to think about precision nutrition for cancer patients and trying to understand that if you have a certain bacteria in your gut, maybe that's okay, or maybe it's not okay, and maybe we need to alter the bacteria in your gut so you will respond better to cancer drugs. Right. And the cancer itself will not be able to develop resistance because the bacteria in your gut prime your immune system in a different way. So that being said, one of the things that's intriguing to me is how does the microbiome environment interact with athletes? And young athletes might be very different than older athletes. But paying attention to a nutritional approach or a dietary approach that's anti-inflammatory may be very, very critical for an athlete's development and athlete's performance. We talk about eating healthy, but sometimes we don't really precisely know what that means.
Right.
And you might have 100 youth soccer players at age, let's say 15, 16, that are trying to get to the highest level. And it may be that studying their bacteria in their gut, and that might even mean getting samples of their poop, as they say, to try to see if specific bacteria in specific athletes' guts needs to be altered or modified to enhance their performance. It might be that some gut bacteria is related to inflammation in a higher percentage than somebody else's gut bacteria. So then can we begin to provide precision nutrition for athletes that will say, okay, well, this athlete needs to eat this kind of dietary approach. It could be a Mediterranean dietary approach, and they shouldn't have more than maybe 25 or 30% carbohydrates in that, and they shouldn't be certainly getting rid of the sugars. And maybe in this athlete, they need a different kind of bacterial load. So we talk about a nutritional load, but maybe we need to think about bacterial load that might also affect their performance, their health, and integrate in terms of how they're sleeping, and integrate in how they're in terms of injury prevention, which I know is an area near and dear to your heart. And so I think this is an evolving science. We talk about periodization in training soccer players, and what that means is that during a certain week of training that you dictating the intensity levels of how they're going to train, and that can also relate to injury prevention. But maybe it's more than that. Maybe it's how they're eating and the different bacteria in their gut that will also relate to that kind of periodization plan and help them in terms of giving their maximal output or the maximal intensity, and help them in terms of injury prevention after a specific event. So maybe after a 90-minute game, the bacterial load that they need to bring into the body needs to change a little bit to keep inflammation down, if that makes any sense. Right? So I think it's a really, really interesting evolving area of science and cancer research is the microbiomes. And I think we're going to see that filter out more and more into athletes and to more regular individuals. We know that patients with irritable bowel syndrome or certain bowel gut syndromes like Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and giving them, quote, poop pills with a recolonization of different kinds of bacteria can make all the difference in the world and actually shut down some of their inflammatory symptoms that they're having. And so that's pretty exciting. We're just starting to graze the top of this whole mountain that we're trying to understand. But more and more, we're finding out the cliche of "you are what you eat," right. And eating a plant-based diet may significantly impact your lactate threshold, your VO2 max, all those things that we just didn't really think about. So, it's so easy to give the young athlete a pizza after a big game.
Sure.
Is that really going to help them in terms of recovery? Is that really going to help them in terms of performance enhancement versus, let's say, Mediterranean dietary approach, which we know hands down from a cardiovascular and a cancer standpoint is one of the healthiest diets you can eat. And if you look around the world at blue zones, places where people live past on 100, they typically have a plant-based diet. They have a diet that includes things like honey, that has incredibly important antibacterial and anti-inflammatory components to it. As adults, we talk about red wine in terms of the polyphenols and the flavopyranols that you have in there. So we're still learning here, but I do think, and I'm excited about the possibilities of clubs like yours that might have an interest in understanding the microbiomes and how it integrates with all the other things that you're starting to do to have more of a boutique approach and a precision approach to the development of a soccer player.
So what's interesting is that food pyramid, that may
have to be rethought.
Throw that out the window.
Yeah, and we've been wrong for years and years and years where we told people that certain things like eggs were bad for your cholesterol and whole butter, get it out of your diet. And we found out, in fact, in margarine with trans fatty acids was horrendously worse. So I think we do need to rethink our nutritional science and start to understand precision microbiomes in athletes' guts. And again, certain athletes may colonize gut bacteria completely different than another athlete, and so we need to modify their diet to make sure that we want that bacteria to stay in their gut, or we may need to alter it a little bit and try to provide something new, maybe different kinds of probiotics that are going to improve their performance.
So if a parent, if they're hearing this and they're interested in sort of having this customized treatment or a customized plan for their child's nutrition and making sure that gut bacteria is where it needs to be, they would need a specialist. There's nothing they can do on their own. I mean, what are you?
Yeah, I would think it's going to be more specialized, and there'll be groups that are investigating this and I'm sure there probably already are people who are investigating this for athletes to start to get samples of their bacteria in the gut and say, well, listen, you've got very high levels of this specific type of bacteria. We know that's associated with a lot of inflammation. Maybe we start to recolonize your gut with something different. Maybe here's some foods that we would recommend that would bring in certain bacteria that we know are anti-inflammatory. So it starts potentially with something relatively, I think, simple, but something that could be studied and
some kind of testing. So maybe find a company that just tests and gives you the raw data back, and then you can sort of interpret it.
And I'm sure at face value, you tell a parent, we're going to test your kid's poop, and we're going to test the bacteria in it. Right. But it may not be as crazy as it sounds. Right. And it may be that those kinds of things might dictate why, let's say, a European soccer player has specific capabilities in the second half of a football match where they have lower lactate thresholds and they have able to maintain a higher intensity. Yeah. It could be something based not just on their athletic training, but types of foods that they're eating as well, and the bacteria that's in their gut. So I think that these things are really, really exciting in regards to investigation, and I think it's clearly going to be something that will be looked at athletes and might again get back to precision nutrition for the athlete in the future.
Well, I think everything is going in that direction. I mean, sort of the more people you have, the more diversity you have, and the more variations of things you need. And even in a team, you've got tall players, you have small players, you have technical players. So it's only a natural, sort of logical conclusion that nutrition would need to be customized and personalized.
Yeah, I mean, everybody genomically is different. Their DNA is different. Their makeup's different. How they process foods is different. And so the one size fits all, even with quote healthy nutrition, may need to be a little bit more personalized for the specific athlete who has different types of gut bacteria. And so I'm something that I think is very exciting and worthwhile exploring, and I think it's going to start up obviously at the highest levels of athletic performance in the pro levels in different sports, but I think clearly it's going to begin to filter down into the to development academies and the high level youth programs in the future. And it's something we really should be paying attention to. I mean, let's be honest here. We have a tremendous problem already, as you know, with obesity and diabetes in this country. So clearly we're not doing the right thing, but I think we can take the next step and start to really understand each person's individual bacterial needs in their gut, to say, this is the best for you. We want you eating these types of vegetables.
Right.
You're going to eat these types of vegetables because this is going to give you the bacteria that we think will enhance your performance in your gut and keep inflammation down and hopefully lead to less injury development and improved injury prevention.
Fantastic.
So,
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Cool. Thank you.
How was that?
Perfect.